Right. Hello, guys. Well, how are we all doing? The Premier League is back. The 2026-27 starts tonight when Arsenal will face Coventry for as defending champions start their bid for their Premier League title. So many to look forward to, folks, for the new season. I am buzzing. Everyone's buzzing. And quite excited for three promoted teams, the likes of Ipswich, Hull City and Coventry. Great to see them back in the Premier League for the first time in 25 years. So excited, of course. Right, before we get into the YouTube channel, please hit the subscribe button. We're just like, we're just 4 hours away, 4.5 hours before the Premier League starts tonight. Starting with the opening game of the 2026-27 Premier League season, comes at the Emirates Stadium as the champion. Premier League is the champions. Arsenal taking on Championship winners Coventry. Mikel Arteta and his Arsenal side are now in new era, having been runner-ups in 3 successive seasons. The Gunners are now the team to beat, and they appear to have a good chance of defending their Premier League title. With so many of leading clubs rebuilding, Manchester City and Liverpool, for example, are the 2 teams that have beaten them in the title in recent years, but they head into the season with new managers, which is also the same for Tottenham and settled Arsenal, but may evolve in their side to become more proactive, but will sense a huge opportunity to send out a statement on the opening day. But Arsenal began the 2026-27 season with an impressive performance in Community Shield as they hammered Manchester City by 3-0 at the Millennium Stadium in Cardiff. But as for Coventry, following their rise back from League 2 to the Championship, even losing a second-tier playoff final, Frank Lampard took in charge of Coventry midway through 2024-25 season. But the former Everton and Chelsea boss led the Skies Blues to finish the playoff semi-finals that season. And after a disappointment against eventually promoted Sunderland in that campaign, Coventry then set about extremely impressive 2025-26 season. Coventry City threatened to break records midway through the campaign, but eventually having overcome a major mid-season to bring themselves back up the Premier League as champions. But after a relatively slow start to the transfer window, Coventry have begun to spend some money with Cole Rashworth and then Celebri Eurokuri. I can't pronounce his name, but breaking their club record fee alongside additions of Luma Tamacha, Aluli Amendi, and Glosso Hammer, with Savic and Shurik and Ty Amoni both also set to join. Right. Coventry boss Frank Lampard has to show just how much he has improved as a technician. Often too open with Coventry, with Derby County and then Chelsea. His Everton side went too far the other way, but the concern will be that he may fall into that trap, limiting Coventry, especially away from home against the biggest but the best. But they were signs of a better balance to Lampard and Coventry's tactics last year, though. Arsenal will be expected to evolve their style to become more attacking this time around. And with the Premier League title now under their belt, but a home win is to be expected, but it could be quite a high-scoring game with Coventry potentially setting up to catch them by surprise on a counter-attack, but a more proactive style than Lampard's last stint in the Premier League with Everton. But I'm going for Arsenal to win 3-0, but I think Coventry might get a goal. If they score a goal, then it puts the pressure on Arsenal, but I think Arsenal will have far too much and get their defence under the way. I'm going for Arsenal to win 3-0. And then on to tomorrow, where Hull City are back in the Premier League pretty much against the all odds as the Tigers kicks off their campaign against the might of Manchester United at the MKM Stadium. Hull City were in transfer embargo last summer, but that prevented the club from making signings for the transfer fee. But despite that, the appointment of Sergei Djokovic leaving many of their supporters expectable. Hull achieved promotion via the playoffs, but sixth spot in the Championship was confirmed on the final day of the season. But then they went on to defeat third place Millwall in the semi-finals before a win against Middlesbrough rather than Southampton due to the Saints' inclusion as a result of Spygate. With Scotland international Ollie McBurney scoring a second half stoppage time winner at Wembley Stadium. But their transfer business has become hectic as the season became into view as Aku Colorio suggesting there could be as many as 17 or 18 new signings by the end of the window. But in mid-January, after Manchester United had parted ways with Ruben Amorim earlier that month, the Red Devils took the division to appoint Michael Carrick as the interim manager. Carrick led United to third place and returned to the Champions League, UEFA Champions League, promising the club to give the former Middlesbrough boss the job on a permanent basis, but playing 3 or 4 days, which will be the case from mid-September onwards, but prevents a new challenge of Carrick. And for United, however, the start of the season should be really seeing them picking up from where they left off last season, fresh and firing as they try to assert themselves once again as one of the dominant forces in English football. Hull plays such a fine style of football in the Championship. Only 4 teams managed to score more than them in a 46-game regular season, with 3 teams, fairly remarkably, conceding more too. They did then seemingly against the odds and logic immediately shift their style and the more than conservative and effective one in the playoffs. But with their 3 games consisting of a total of just 3 goals, keeping 3 clean sheets, and they will again try and do a similar job in the Premier League, but especially on the opening day against United. And that may help United, who will fear newly promoted Bounce getting after their defence. But instead, United will be able to dictate things. And all belted better on the counter-attack under Carrick, and should still get themselves on the opening day victory without too much fuss. But I think Everton will frustrate them a bit. But I think United will get over the line to win probably 2-1. 2-1 United. I think they will have enough quality to get over the line. And now, 3 o'clock kickoff. The Hill Dickinson Stadium kicks off Everton's Premier League campaign against last season's UEFA Europa Conference League winners Crystal Palace. Having survived by the skin of their teeth by a final couple of seasons at Goodison Park, David Moyes is now tasked with progressing Everton and bringing the European football to the Hill Dickinson Stadium. Having missed out on last season, the Evertonians perhaps more than due to their attacking nature of Moyes' style of football, but they were better away from home. But their best performances at the Hill Dickinson Stadium coming in games against the bigger sides in England, such as their victory against Chelsea in March, a late defeat to Liverpool in the Merseyside derby, and a thrilling 3-3 draw against Manchester City. And prior to the arrival of Oliver Glasner, Crystal Palace have never won a major honour, and now the Seagulls have won the FA Cup and the Community Shield, and as well as the UEFA Europa Conference League as they defeated Rayo Vallecano in the final in Leipzig in May. Palace have again undergone some changes with the selling club, and now losing their manager, Glasner now of Nottingham Forest, who have been replaced by Pura Sage, who an extremely impressive job in helping Lens challenge PSG for the League One title last season in France. And then, as mentioned, Everton's preference is to play on the counter-attack with Regan defence and then sprinting forward. And the Toffees would not be able to do against the Glasgow Palace, but who were perhaps the best at that style of football in the Premier League. But Sarge played more proactive style in France, and with Lens as well as Lopchi, Lares, but away from home is likely to set for a wait before he can really imprint in his football onto his side. They too, but they may be more comparative. Comparative. 180. Newcastle way. Conservative earlier on, but as a result, a low-scoring encounter seems a deficit bet for this one in Liverpool. So I played it sense to play at a 1-1 draw. I think it could be a draw. I'm sticking with 1-1. Right, Ipswich Town headed into the Premier League for the second time in 3 seasons, but under the new management as they now take on Sunderland at Portman Road. Ipswich Town gained promotion back to the Premier League as runner-ups to Coventry City in the Championship last season. A third promotion during his Regan. Kieran McKenna has now taken the decision to step away from the football from the time being this summer, and he has been replaced by the dugout by former FC Bournemouth and Wolverhampton Wanderers boss Gary O'Neill. O'Neill most recently oversaw Strasbourg missing out on European qualification in League One and having been knocked out in the semi-finals of both and the Cup de France and UEFA Europa Conference League. And Sunderland produced a remarkable campaign last year following their promotion to the Premier League via the Championship playoffs. The Black Cats went on a wild ride to finish 7th and gain qualification for the UEFA Europa League, especially did the double over Newcastle and Chelsea throughout the way. But after the summer of big spending last year, Sunderland will want to now progress. Things keeps a little less busy with the captain Granit Xhaka remaining at the club, but amid earlier the summer interest from Chelsea alongside manager Regis de Bries. Ipswich will sneak to eliminate what Sunderland achieved last season by being competitive in the Premier League, but the appointment of Gary O'Neill is perhaps a statement, though, with regards to them seeing themselves. But as they set for a long and a hard relegation battle throughout the campaign, and Sunderland will be keen to get points on the board earlier on in the season before that their 8-game UEFA Europa League phase gets underway. So back in Sunderland to overcome an Ipswich side that, at least in the dugout, do already appear to them what they were just a few months ago. But I got a sneaky feeling that Ipswich will get their 3 points, but I really do at Portman Road, and I think they might make the home advantage count. I'm going for Ipswich to win 2-1. And then onto the City Ground. Nottingham Forest are beginning yet another new area at the City Ground in Nottingham as they welcome Leeds United on the opening day of the 2026-27 Premier League season. In the 2025-26 Premier League season, Nottingham Forest eventually comfortably survive after struggling for much of it amid a run to the semi-finals of the UEFA Europa League. That season saw them have Nuno Espirito Santo, Ange Postecoglou, Sean Dyche and then Victor Piori in the dugout, and Piori eventually steered him clear, but he has now been replaced by the former Crystal Palace boss Oliver Glasner. They had 4 managers last season, but didn't work out, but they survived and then Oliver Glasner, who won Palace's first 3 trophies in their history by finishing by defeating Real Valencia by a 0-0 in the UEFA Europa Conference League final in Leipzig in May. But Leeds United gained promotion back to the top flight in the 2024-25 season, winning the championship, and Daniel Farke, who was separated to be on the verge of sack, but did an extremely good job. Leeds stayed up comfortably, but while also reaching the semi-finals of the FA Cup. Questions over whether or not Farke could be able to adapt his style of football to become more effective in the top flights. Following his poor stints with Norwich City in the Premier League were answered, and now is the time for many Leeds supporters for them to become more proactive once again. Right. Nottingham Forest will have a reckless crowd behind them, but they'll be furthest boosted by Oliver Glasner being in the dugout. But his appointment is quite a significant coup, and given that he has left Europa League club to move to the City Ground, and Leeds will travel to the City Ground with belief that they remain as difficult to beat. But they were last year, but while balancing against becoming more proactive. So both teams scoring seems a decent bet for this one on the opening day of the campaign, but I can see this one being another draw, but 1-1, another 1-1 for me. Right, 5:30, the first Saturday evening game of the 2026-27 Premier League season is a London derby and it gets Community Stadium as Brentford faces Tottenham Hotspur. Brentford went through an extremely busy summer last year with several changes to their squad and the loss of manager Thomas Frank, but Keith Andrews did well to steady the ship as the Bees nearly finished in the top 8 and the European spots. And some supporters have some concerns over the sustainability over their fairly reactive style of Andrews, playing some of their counter attack, still relentlessly set pieces. However, at home, they know how to ruffle their feathers of the most teams. It remains remarkable that Tottenham Hotspur only survived relegation on the final day of the Premier League season last year, and that came a year after they finished 17th again under Ange Postecoglou, a season whereby they actually got fewer points. But therefore, despite winning in the Europa League in 2025, and it has been a miserable couple of years for Spurs, but the appointment of Roberto De Zerbi did spark some improvement at the back end of last season, but they will hope to kick on this year. Right. With home advantage, Brentford will be expected to get themselves on front foot and try to get after a Tottenham side that they are entering a new area with a lot of optimism. Spurs will be expected to now properly play De Zerbi's passing style and having been a little more defensive at the back end of last season. Those two factors should mean we are in for a fun game for the neutral in West London, but both teams scoring seemingly a decent bet for this one. I'm going for Brentford with home advantage, 2-1. And then move on to Sunday, Super Sunday. Brighton Hove Albion get their Premier League season underway against Aston Villa down on the south coast at the MX Stadium. Fabian Herzler has come under criticism from Brighton supporters during his 2 years in the charge of the Seagulls, especially with the mega money spent during his first summer transfer window in 2024. And that said, though, the youngest permanent manager in the Premier League history led Brighton to Europa Conference League qualification last season. They finished strongly through spring to get to 8th in the table, but the Seagulls shared a goalless draw at the Arctic Circle with Tromsø in the first leg of their playoff round tie on the other day, yesterday or last night. So let's talk about Aston Villa. After a woeful start to the year, Unai Emery led Aston Villa to 4th place in the UEFA Champions League qualification for the second time in 3 seasons, with the Villains also ending their trophy drought, winning his fifth Europa League title with an impressive 3-0 hammering of Freiburg in the final in Istanbul. And Unai Emery didn't necessarily even need his Villa side to be as good as they were in the Premier League, but having achieved two different ways of qualifying for Europe's elite club competition. The Villains scrambled to a 2-1 loss to PSG Paris Saint-Germain in the UEFA Super Cup to kick off their campaign. Brighton tend to dominate proceedings when they are at home. However, the Southerners are often prodigy, but leading to quite a few frustrating draws at the Emirates Stadium, contributing to that criticism of Hertzler. Unai Emery has endured some slow starts at Villa, failing to win any of their opening 6 matches across all competitions last year, and having previously begun a season with a 5-1 loss to Newcastle United at St James's Park a couple of years earlier. And Villa had a few stars at the FIFA World Cup 2026. Another slow start may well be beckoned, so the signing with the host is a decent value here. But I'm going for a 2-2 draw. Going for a Desmond. And then 3 more matches before we complete our Premier League predictions. Week 1. Manchester City are beginning a new era in the 2026-27 Premier League season as they welcome FC Bournemouth to the Etihad Stadium on the opening day of the campaign. For the first time since May 2016, Manchester City are managed by someone that isn't Pep Guardiola, the former Leicester City and Chelsea boss Enzo Maresca, once an assistant to Guardiola at City, and he's now at the helm at the Etihad. As well as the departure of their legendary manager, City have also had both John Stones and Bernardo Silva depart the club, but with something changing of the guard, and that did begin a year or so earlier in the flux of the youngest talent, but as much as Abuse, Consillo and Ty Reinders and Ryan Cherky through their spine. But Maresca's era has started badly, with City, hammered by Arsenal by 3-0 at the Community Shield at the Minimum Stadium, somewhere in South Wales. So, as for FC Bournemouth, are themselves going through a change. Andoni Iraola announced his departure for the end of the season in April, and now the Liverpool boss, we'll talk about it a little bit at the moment, but having been replaced by the former Borussia Blincio and RB Leipzig boss Marco Rose. The Cherries, with the Back Knights group as their owners, they have proven themselves to be more capable of withstanding change, but even after improving departures of Kepa, Dean Hughley, Milos Kerkez, Ike Zerbi and Dango Otara last summer, as well as Antony Semenyo to City in this winter, they still managed to finish as high as 6th, qualifying for the UEFA Europa League and narrowly missing out on the Champions League football. Right, as was the case with both Chelsea and Leicester City, Enzo Maresca's early football can be quite exhilarating and attacking before he finally gets a hold of things and works out a way of being able to balance stats with control, but both have positive and negative effects. Bournemouth will continue to play it with Iraola-like high press with Rose now at the home, and they will again to be the case of no matter who their opposition is. So a high scoring encounter seems a decent bet for this one in Manchester on Sunday afternoon, but I'm going for Man City to win 2-0. And then the big one, the Alexander Isak derby. Both of these teams will be under pressure from the off as Newcastle United kick off their Premier League campaign with a visit of Liverpool to St James's Park in the North East. Eddie Howe has done a good job at Newcastle United. He has qualified for the UEFA Champions League twice and won them the EFL Cup. This is a repeat of the Carabao Cup final, reaching the final of that competition on that occasion. But last season helped the pressure on him, and he has since then departed midway through the pre-season, replaced by Giles, led by Ali Halia, back-to-back AFC Champions League titles, after lifting Real Ball Salzburg a few years ago, and one of the more highly reactive young coaches in Europe. And the top 8 in the Premier League qualify for European football, but with Brighton qualifying on just 53 points, Newcastle finishing the bottom half of the table somewhere 12th, and we're closer to the bottom 3 in relegation places than they were the top 5 in the UEFA Champions League spots. But Newcastle have lost a few players, the likes of Bruno Guimaraes, Anthony Gordon, Kieran Trippier, etc. And then Liverpool, having won the Premier League title in 2024-25 season, Liverpool then endured a tragic death of Diogo Jota last year, but following the season saw the Reds narratively unfit due to their summer, and that is also saw them spend around 400 million on new players, 4th to 5th in the table, but they secured UEFA Champions League qualification as late as the final day of the season. And that then saw Arne Slot depart the club, but he has been replaced by Adoni Iraola, who led FC Bournemouth to a 6th place finish in the Premier League last season, just 3 points behind Liverpool. Right, what has been a theme of the Eddie Howe era, and it did remain the case of some famous victories last year. Remember Rio Gamoa, the 16-year-old sensation, won it for us to beat Newcastle 3-2. Would have been expecting a classic here, but they'll be largely underwhelmed during some spells. But Newcastle fans will be up for it. They'll be fired up. But they got themselves from the so-called big teams, especially at St James's Park. Liverpool will take time to get used to Iraola's extremely aggressive style, and was the case in his first season at Bournemouth. So that many further helped Newcastle with both teams scoring seems a decent bet for this one in Tyneside. But I think Liverpool will just probably get over the line at St James's Park just to just to edge it to beat Newcastle 2-1. They've got a good record there, but I expected them to be continued. But I wouldn't surprise me if Newcastle will get a draw or probably end their woeful record against Liverpool in the league over the years. But I'm going for 2-1 Liverpool. I'm going to back my boys, and I think Isak will probably score. And I'm going for Jeremy Jacket. We went to Anfield during as a Liverpool fan when Liverpool beat Como 2-0. And then Jeremy Jacket, what a signing he has been anyway, but I think he could do some damage as well. And finally, this is the first Monday night game of the Premier League season. Is the new London derby between RB Lowe's Fulham and Xabi Alonso's Chelsea. Fulham have stagnated. The cottagers were left frustrated by the FA Cup 5th round loss to Southampton last season, which is assured being mid-table in the Premier League, and that has contributed to the departure of Marco Silva. Silva had done a good job in the Craven Cottage, but struggled to break through into the top half and European spots. But he has since been replaced by Abelio, who took charge of Real Madrid after the departure of Xabi Alonso midway through last season. Arbelio has led on his contacts at Real Madrid to bring due to Celio Parlicio and Gonzalo Garcia for a combined fee, but believed to be a region of 42.5 million. Chelsea have appointed a long-term friend of Arbelio, Xabi Alonso. Arbelio took in charge of Madrid after the sacking of Alonso, but it is fair to suggest that was a decision more than less but forced by underperforming players, but who got even worse after the departure of Alonso. But prior to that, Xabi Alonso led by Real Sociedad B to its historic promotion to La Liga 2 before leaving Bayern Leverkusen in his first full season in charge in the Bundesliga. But he completed the domestic cup double without losing a game, while also reaching Europa League final. But they were runner-ups in his second season in charge before Leverkusen then went on to finish 6th in the Bundesliga after his departure. Right, if not the likes of Harry Wilson and Raul Jimenez, Fulham may well have found themselves in a lot of trouble last season, but they have gone an Indo Abelio with a no managerial track record as a senior level behind him by the tremendous spell in charge of Real Madrid. But he has a tough test here, and Chelsea will be expected to be much more improved this season. A bit like Spurs, they've got no European football, but Xabi Alonso has previously been able to get his teams firing from the start for his Regan. So a Chelsea victory is to be expected to be in this local derby. So I'm going for Chelsea to win 3-1. And that's my predictions then for the Premier League 2026-27. And guys, leave on your comments below. Let you know. Leave your comments below. Let you know your comments. And I can't wait for it to start. Going to be surprise packages, shock winners. But who knows what can happen. But see you then. Have a good evening, guys. Have a great weekend, whatever you're doing. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye.